to Books and Brews number 17. Our guest today is Eden Gruger. Did I say that correctly?
You absolutely did.
Wonderful. All the way from England?
Yes, I'm just outside London in England.
Okay. Okay. So you're living what kind of a very metropolitan life?
No, really
really?
not. So I'm in the suburbs. So here we have a thing called the Central Line, which if you live on the Central Line, it's a fast way into the city, which people really, really love. But I'll be honest, I never go. I think I'm going to. I think about all the museums and the galleries and the inspirational things. And then I think, yeah, then I have to kind of leave my house and mix with people. And I am the classic introverted writer type. So, yeah.
You know, I'm the type who, if I don't leave my house for 5, 6, 7 days, it's not going to bother me. I'm probably going to be about the last one to get cabin fever. So I just had to laugh when you said, well, not really suburban, because we live, as I just mentioned to you, on a farm and kind of an hour from anywhere. So to me, the suburbs sounds very, very urban, but it's a pleasure to have you. And I've actually had a few authors lately from England and Ireland. And was there one from Scotland? I don't think so. So if you're an author from Scotland, give me a call. We need to get you on just because you're from Scotland. So introduce yourself and your books to my listeners.
So as I said, or as you said, I am Eden Gruger, and I write humorous fiction collections. So the first one was Down with Frogs, which is the one that I will read from later. And then the next one was Laughing at Myself, because I am constantly laughing at myself. Then Funny Bird and Friends Like These, easy for me to say, is my latest collection, which is obviously about friendship. So each of the collections are around a topic. So we've done relationships, I've done being neurodiverse, which is laughing at myself, and friendships. And Funny Bird, actually, I must admit, that's a collection of stories that I just loved, but didn't fit anywhere else. So they just got in their own little pot.
I like that. So, yeah. And you write some nonfiction too, correct?
I do. Yeah. So I write books to help people write, market, obviously publish and market their own books. So I'm also an Alliance of Independent Authors approved writing mentor. So that's where the nonfiction books came in.
Wonderful. Yeah, I have one book to kind of hopefully help writers, and I think that writers should buy it, but I need to advertise it more. They don't know it exists is the main problem.
That doesn't help.
Right. I would like to invite listeners on YouTube to please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment so we can grow, so we can continue to promote great authors like Eden. And Eden, what are you drinking today?
Well, I would be drinking a cup of tea, obviously, I'm British, but I'm actually drinking a beaker of water. Now, I don't have glasses in my house because I drop things. I swoosh things off of the side. I see things and knock things over and flying. So, yeah, so I have relegated myself to plastic speakers like a child.
I think that's wise, though. It's good to just know ourselves and work with what we have instead of insisting that we're something we're not. So I do have to kind of laugh. Let me grab something here about the breaking things. So I stumbled across, have you seen these before?
No, that's gorgeous.
Okay. Well, I thought so too, and I absolutely love these wine glasses, and I started seeing them at thrift stores, and so I started collecting a whole set bit by bit. And then one day I saw like dozens of them at an estate sale, and I said, no, I have enough. So then I got back together with my former fiance, now my husband, and he never drops things, but he started bumping these and dropping them in one for one.
Does he secretly hate the glasses?
Well, the funny part is I thought these were so beautiful. And it turns out the history of these is they actually were kind of like given away at Arby's, a fast food chain here. And I'm like, oh, my beautiful glasses are cheap fast food giveaways.
No, they are beautiful glasses.
I think they're wonderful. And we have lived in northern Minnesota. And so this reminds me of winter in, northern Minnesota. So I think that's part of why I love them, because I just think winter is beautiful. So what I'm drinking, because you had mentioned on your site you don't drink anymore. I was going to go totally non-alcoholic, but then I drank something cold. I got a terrible chill. So I've got coffee with Irish cream in it, because that's what finally warms me up is Irish cream, not even just drinking something hot. So that's what I've got. So
that sounds amazing.
It's tasty. Yeah, I do like it, and I do drink it primarily when I get really chilled like that. So it is starting to get colder here. So would you like to read from your book?
I would. Okay, so this is from a story called The Ideal World Relationship Charter, aka The Equal Partnership. If he is sure that you have met before and you feel sure that you haven't, and he says that you spend all your time flirting with him, even though you're sure you wouldn't have, don't go out with him. He's either got you confused with somebody else, or is delusional enough to believe he knows your behavior better than you do. If you go to dinner and he talks about the things he knows about you that are his assumptions or hearsay, say thank you for the meal and leave after the main course. If he says, I prefer conventionally pretty women, but there's something about you that made me take notice, understand that the poor chap does not understand how beauty works and move on. If he says, you want someone who thinks you're the best thing since sliced bread and that won't be me, take him at his word and leave immediately. If you spend the night together and he says, that wasn't as good as I thought it would be, get up, leave the room and never go back. If you should be in your own home, this might mean moving house, but it will be worth it. Oh, and block his phone number, etc. Never speak to him again. Never let him back into any of your private areas because he does not deserve them. If you find out that he lied when he said he was divorced when you met, that they were in fact still living together, or that they only filed divorce papers just before you met, expect that everything else he said will be a lie too, and leave. If he lets his kids tell you to drop dead, jump on your furniture in their shoes, break your possessions without consequences, or correct you in front of them, open the door and ask them all to leave, even if it is raining, snowing, or there is a tornado. If you ignore these points, you can't blame him for your time together. If he is a bum from day one, don't accept it. Don't let your friends convince you that he's a good catch. Don't ignore your instincts. I've done those things and I was stupid. It seemed that I needed a better plan to keep me on the newly formed straight and narrow, so I formulated the Ideal World Relationship Charter to enable space for personal growth, otherwise known as the Equal Partnership. The thought was that it would be a simple step-by-step guide to help me to use all I had learned. Do feel free to borrow the charter to help iron out any of your own relationship woes. We begin with the statement of intent. A bit business-like, but it's important to lay out your expectations for the other person. Each person is to take responsibility for their own personal growth and shared responsibility for the growth of the relationship through talking, listening, having fun together and apart, by clearly and honestly communicating about what you want and what you have to offer. Okay, so far so good. I mean, that all made sense, right? Now to the practical. Once living together, each person is to pay half of household bills and to do half of all household tasks. Again, this seems like plain old common sense. Aren't we all striving to be equal in this day and age? What with everyone having choices, jobs, their own money and whatnot? So yes, Let this home be an example of true equality. None of that. I've done the vacuuming for you, dear. For me, darling, how thoughtful. What's that? You aren't shedding any hair or skin cells towards making the dust. How very hygienic of you. As you can tell, relationships have been somewhat tricky, and I absolutely adore unfortunately a reality TV show. Any reality TV show that's around relationships, I wish I could resist, but I just can't. And
Right.
all they ever talk about is the communication and personal growth and blah blah blah. And yes, that's all very important, but I thought I would just make a bit of a slightly poking fun at his story. So that's where the ideal world relationship
Somebody is
is
here to say hello. Can you see her?
Oh, hi. Oh my goodness, you are huge.
Yep.
Oh,
I used to sometimes I would be sitting on like a bar stool and I'd feel something poke my shoulder and it would be her nose. And she won't do it anymore at her age, but when she was very young and would stand on her hind legs, she could put her paws on my shoulder and she'd be looking down at me.
Wow.
So it's one of my favorite
bless
pictures
her.
of her is we were dressed as a cat and dog for Halloween to hand out candy. So I was
so
naturally the one dressed as the cat. She was dressed as a dog. And it's a horrible picture of me, but I love it because she's standing up there and looking down at me with the big head. So yeah, as I said, I don't know if she'll require me to take her outside on short notice, but remind me, what was the name of the book? And can you hold up the cover again?
Down with Frogs. Yes.
Down with Frogs. And so is it about relationships or specifically about dating?
It's both. So there are stories like going to meet the parents, going to meet the sister, an older sister's advice, and then so there's a real range, lots of dating stories, but then lots of relationships that maybe aren't working, maybe people recovering from breakup, so the whole mixture.
I think you have some very good advice in the list of things you read. And it reminded me of a story. There was a period of maybe a couple years where I kind of joked that I must have gone on 100 first dates. And one that really stands out in my mind, I have to say most of them were really nice guys. We just weren't a match. But there were a couple of horror stories, and one was a guy who said on his profile he was a PhD, CEO of his own company. I forget what else he said. And when I met him in person, turned out what I have a PhD meant was I've started working on my associates and I plan to get a PhD someday. And he was like in his 40s or 50s. I'm CEO of my own company meant that he helped his mom run a thrift store out of her garage. On top of it, he spent 3 hours talking nonstop about himself. I think there were a couple other lies in there that I don't remember at this point. He spent 3 hours talking nonstop about himself. And afterward, when he asked, well, you want to go out again? I was looking for a polite way to say, well, no, not really. I don't think we're a match, whatever. And he started contacting me on the dating site and he started trying to bully me into a second date. He accused me, he was Black and he was Muslim. And so he started accusing me of being racist and Islamophobic. And it's like, how do you nicely say, no, the problem is you're a liar and you're a bore. And now you're trying to bully me. And I talked to my daughter and I said, who was living with me at the time, I said, does this actually work? And she said, you would be surprised how many women will go on that second and third and fourth date and end up in a relationship because they are so afraid of being accused of being racist or whatever it is they hold over their head. And when you were reading that list, I was thinking of him and thinking, I still worry about whoever he finally bullied into being with him. It's like
it's a worry, isn't it?
Most of these guys were really nice guys. You know, so I kind of, some of these books people write all about how awful all the men are that they meet. I'm like, yeah, were they really all that awful? Maybe you just weren't a match, but there are some scary stories out there.
For sure.
So yeah, what prompted you to want to write humor?
Well, I am the kind of person that I tend to see the funny side. And even when something really quite dreadful happens, it doesn't mean that I don't have, you know, obviously when something initially happens, it's like, oh no, it's terrible, and you go through the feelings and stuff. But then when I come through the other side, I'm like, yeah, actually, when I'm telling my girlfriends, they're all falling about laughing. I'm like, yeah, actually, this is quite funny, and you know, and I just kind of make it, you know, and so many times they're like, oh, you should be a stand-up comedian, which would be dreadful because all those people looking at me and
Right.
awful, just awful. So I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna write. They say write with your own voice, so I have. But whenever I go to a writers' conference, I am the only woman writing humor.
Really?
I mean, it's just like when it's like,
surprises
put your
me.
hands up for this genre, I am the only one.
Huh. Why do you
Which
think
is
that
weird.
is?
I don't know, because women are hilarious.
Well, I mean, depending on the woman, but
But
you
yeah,
know,
but if you hear women with their girlfriends, and they will be roaring with laughter because somebody
right.
there will be everyone in the, you know, there'll be one in every group that is absolutely the comedian.
Right. I was just, as you were talking about that, I had my best friend years ago was telling me about something really awful that happened to her. It truly horrible, truly traumatic. And she was laughing as she told me. And you know, there was a moment within that there was an element of humor, but I'm like, I can't believe you're telling me this, and we're both
Yeah,
laughing, and she's like
yeah,
laughing and going, I know.
I know. Yeah,
But I think sometimes humor it's a great coping mechanism.
for
And
sure.
and it's a great way of facing life, you know? I mean, think of the life of Brian, where Brian's on the cross singing and dancing. Life's a piece of
Yeah,
shit when you look
absolutely.
at it.
Always looking on the bright side. Yeah,
Yeah, my
for
husband and I
sure.
sing that sometimes when
Yeah.
things go wrong. But that's one thing I really appreciate about him, or appreciate, there should not be a D on the end of that word, is that he and I, almost no matter what happens, we can laugh. And I almost think, you know, if I'd fallen off the ladder and broken my back today working on that sheep shed, we probably would have found some humor in it. And
Exactly.
just, oh, well, I would have teased him, see, I'm tired of doing the work. Now you have to do it all. But you talk on your website about how you were told writing is not a real job. And
Yeah.
tell me, is it your full-time job now?
It is, yeah. So I am super lucky that along with my mentoring, yeah, I'm writing, I'm mentoring, and that's my job, which
That's
doesn't
fantastic.
really, I know, right? I am absolutely living my dream. You know, if I could go back in time and tell, because I wanted to be a writer from when I learned to read. So literally before I even started school, that's all I wanted to do. All I wanted to do. And if I could go back to child me and be like, don't worry, you absolutely will do it. You'll have to do loads of other jobs first, but you'll come to it. And all of those other
Right.
jobs will make sense when you start writing.
But you know, I think for a writer to have another job, and especially multiple other jobs, I think that really is good for us. It informs our writing. You know, like for instance, my job was teaching music lessons, and I played music or trombone semi-professionally, but I also played harp. I performed on harp and flute, and once under great duress, when our church pianist didn't show up, I did play piano publicly.
Wow.
So, and it was a blast, but it also was a great backdrop for my writing. And now that I'm raising sheep, you know, I've got all these other experiences to work in.
Yes.
But tell us about the path from being told this isn't a real job to now it is? Because I think it was a long
Yeah.
path, 20 years or so.
For yeah, definitely. So as I said, even from being a child, that's what I wanted to do. I loved reading, so I just wanted to write stories for other people.
Mhm.
And yeah, and so that's what I wanted to do. They said, no, you have to go to college, which is here is probably like the tail end of your high school. So it's not like
Mhm.
college, university. So you have to go to college and you have to do what we call A levels, which is like a higher qualification.
Mhm.
So I didn't want to go, but I kind of went. I might have managed to get expelled quite quickly because I really didn't like it. And it just wasn't for me. I liked
Mhm.
the learning side of it, but the classrooms, the moving around, just that whole environment wasn't for me, which became obvious why later.
Mhm.
And then I did lots of voluntary jobs, and then I started working for a charity, and I did lots of kind of secretarial jobs and admin. And then I got into marketing and sales, which I absolutely loved. I sold phones and cars and PCB design software, if you can believe it. I'm the least technical person on the planet, but there we go. And so I did that. And then I spent a bit of time in traditional publishing, in marketing, which is how I then decided later on that I didn't want to be traditionally published.
Mhm.
But it was really fun at the time. It was a great experience. And then out of the blue, my health took a massive nosedive, and I was actually housebound for 7 years,
Oh my
which
goodness.
I know it was a bummer. So I'm gonna obviously not exactly make a joke out of it, but it was really hard, obviously.
Mhm.
But it was such a blessing because um, when I started to recover and I was well enough to go out and about a bit, I joined a creative course for women, and every week was a different topic, and this one particular week was about bravery. And they said,
Mhm.
if you could do anything and courage was not in short supply, what would you do? And without thinking, I just wrote, I would be a writer.
Mhm.
And I went home and I semi thought about it, but it kept coming back. And then I thought, do you know what, now is the time, because I don't have to go to work anymore. I physically can't go to work anymore. If
Mhm.
this isn't the universe saying, there's time to write now, are you going to actually do it? So I started a blog, which is what everybody did then, started a blog,
Mhm.
and it was well received, and people thought I was funny, and people started to ask me if I was going to bring out a book. So in the January, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a book this year. And I released Down with Frogs and first edition in that August. And that's just it. And now I haven't looked back, and it's absolutely what I'm supposed to do.
That's
Really.
fantastic. I'm
Yeah.
I'm interested in your comment that working in traditional publishing made you decide you didn't want to be. What did
Mm.
you see, or why is that?
Because so the idea that, and traditional publishing absolutely works for some people, but I am a kind of control freak, so it doesn't really
Mhm.
work for me. And when I saw how little control that people genuinely have,
Mhm.
I knew it wouldn't really work for me. And also, um, you have to play the game. You have to do what you're asked to do when you're asked to do it. And again, I'm not great at that. So
Right.
it just I just knew that I would struggle. And also because of my health situation, I can have times where I'm hyper focused and I get lots of stuff done, and then I can actually go for months. And obviously I'm mentoring my authors, but I'm not writing myself. I'm not
Mhm.
blocked in any way. I just don't have the energy to do it,
Right.
and that's fine because that's what works for me. But a traditional publisher, that wouldn't wash. They would give you some deadlines and you would have to hit them, and I can't necessarily do that.
And I
So
think that's an excellent point. Now, the reason I went with indie publishing starting in 2009, when it was a little less accepted, but it was growing already. A friend in my writers group, he was new to the group, convinced us all it's number one, it's going to take potentially years to find first an agent, then a publisher. Number two, as you said, you're not going to have that control. Number three, they're going to expect you to do most of the marketing, and they're going to take the vast majority of the royalties. You're going to be lucky to get, what, 7 to 10%. And so if you're going to do all that work anyway, why not get the 60 to 70% of the royalties? And that made a lot of sense to me. And for me, it was also because I felt that my books didn't really fit the mold. I thought we've got secular publishing and Christian publishing. And to my mind, everybody in this world thinks about God and faith. It doesn't matter. Even if you're an atheist, you're thinking about it. And so in my books, I don't consider them Christian fiction, definitely not secular fiction. I just consider them realistic, that people think about these things.
Sure.
And I thought,
Yeah.
Christian fiction is not going to accept these books because this guy's awful. He's sleeping around and he's doing all this stuff and he never has a hallelujah, Jesus is my savior moment. He does steadily improve. And on the other hand, secular publishers are going to be like, that's, yeah, people are thinking about things that they don't think about in secular fiction.
Yeah.
So that's why I went that route. But I find your comment very fascinating. So, and I take it you haven't regretted it.
I have not. No. And I have a friend that still works in trad. He's doing amazing things, and we meet and we chat as much as she's allowed to reveal certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think it's just got more tricky. So
Mm-hmm.
And harder work. So I am very happy with my choice. Yeah.
I'm assuming that you've picked up a few tricks about marketing and sales that have helped you.
Yeah, the odd thing here and there.
What would be your number one, maybe top 2 or 3 tips for marketing for authors?
So my first kind of tip would be don't pay for advertising until you've got at least 3 books. Mm-hmm. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie. People, newbies often think I've got to get as many people to notice my book as humanly possible, as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. And publishing is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So wait till you've got the 3 books, because if you've got 1 book and they love, even if they see your advert, they buy the book, they love it, then what? Mm-hmm. Are they going to remember you in a year's time when you've written the next book, or the 2 years time, however long? And even if you've got 2 books, it's still 3 books. I think that 3 is the golden number, because then mm-hmm. you potentially, for 1 advert, they buy 1 book, they could buy 3 books. So right. There's a better return on investment, definitely. Another tip would be, and this drives people nuts, but know your ideal reader. And this is another thing that people are like, I don't care who reads my book. Anyone can read my book. Yes, anybody could read your book, mm-hmm. but there's literally no book on the planet that appeals to everybody. Right. So who are you going to aim your marketing at? You've got to know who your ideal reader is. I absolutely know who my frog readers are. I know. So every bit of content I produce, every post, even every interview I give, I know who that reader is. I know where she's going to be looking. I know where she's going to be hanging out. I know what she likes. And so, the marketing that I do is going to reach her. She's going to see it. It will resonate with her. And if I'm lucky, she'll follow me and she'll buy my books. Mm-hmm. Third tip, I would say, that's a difficult one because they're my favorite too. What would be my third? I think my third tip would be, and this is a bit of so don't pay other people to do your marketing for you. That's a bit scandalous because everybody wants to outsource things. But mm-hmm. You at least start with, you've got to know your ideal readers. You've got to know what reaches people, where they're going to be, what really, as we say, floats their boat, what gets their juices mm-hmm. flow, what makes them connect to an author, to a book, to a set of characters. Because if you don't know that stuff, you can't really outsource it, because how are you going to tell the person doing your marketing? And they won't have the passion, the care, the interest, the investment that you've got, because it's your book.
Right.
So,
And that really hits home, because when I'm on, especially on LinkedIn, all these book promoters want to connect with me. And sure enough, then I get, your writing is so amazing and fantastic. And I'm like, which one of my books have you read? I usually don't hear from them again. Or, I'm at the point of telling them, why don't you read a few of my books so you understand what it is you want to market and have some clue how, and I never hear from them again.
Yeah. So you're more polite than me when they message me, and they message me through my website, which drives me
Constantly
nuts.
too. Mm-hmm.
It's constant. And then they say crazy stuff like, oh, I've looked at your content. Would you like to produce an ebook? And I'm like, you haven't even looked. How have
Because you
even...
already have an ebook, I bet.
For sure. Yeah, I have 7.
Yeah.
So how have you somehow in your spiel, you haven't noticed? And if I'm feeling in a particularly snappy mood, I might message them back and say, hey, would you like to learn how to really do marketing? I have some courses if you're interested. Which is a bit cheeky, but and they don't reply, weirdly. They don't.
Right. They generally don't. That's so one thing you talk about, I believe, on your site is having been, I'm not sure how recently, diagnosed with autism.
Yeah. So it was actually I'd say it was probably about 6 months ago that
very recent.
Super recent. So about 6 months ago, I did a questionnaire called, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but I'm calling it the RAD questionnaire. It's RAADS. And you can find it online, lots of places for free. And the neurotypical cutoff was like 55, and I scored 175, and I was like,
oh my goodness,
I know, holy moly, right? And it was I was in bed, and it was late at night, and I should have really been asleep, but I decided to do the questionnaire because I scroll at night. That's what I do. And I was just, to start with, I thought it was hilarious, because I thought, I can't possibly be 50 and not know I'm autistic. How could that happen? So I thought, well, that's just nonsense. And then I said to one of my girlfriends, I was like, guess what? I did this questionnaire, and it says I'm autistic. And she's like, well, of course you are. It's like, what? So the next day, I was in a bit of a temper, and I did the questionnaire again, and I scored even higher. So,
oh my.
I know. So I was like, I better start researching this. So I started to do some research, and then I had an assessment, and I kind of knew from everything I read, it became more and more obvious that my introverted nature, my love of, I am quite a rigid person, but I can't do routine. I'd love to do routine. I can't do it. I can follow somebody else's routine. And I also I collect things thinking that I'm going to do stuff, but I collect loads and loads and loads and loads of a particular thing. And then I'm inundated and virtually buried under whatever it is was my latest fad. And then I realize I don't like it anymore, or I'm never going to do the thing. And yeah, so all these different things. But when they actually officially told me, yeah, I cried for about 3 days. I just couldn't believe it, because it was such a, it wasn't a shock, but obviously it's still, to hear an official person say, yeah, you're actually moderately autistic. Not us, because I said to her, am I not like borderline? And she was like, no, really not. So, and then I did the most autistic thing in an assessment that anyone's ever done. So at the end, we're talking, and the chatter sort of dies away, and I think, it must be time to leave. But no, then they start chatting again. So I'm like, oh no, it's not time to leave. And the whole time I'm like semi joining in, but thinking, when is this ending? And then eventually they sort of stopped and started again, and then stopped. And then I said, sorry, when can I go? And I was just like, we were just laughing, because I was like, yeah, that's quite autistic as well. So, but now I've literally spent the time listening to podcasts, reading books, meeting other late diagnosed women, and Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one
So
thing I wanted to ask was, I was really curious. We have an image of autism as being nonverbal, you can't be touched, sounds make you go crazy. And I do know a little more about autism than that. You know, I know there are lots of very high functioning people. To me, some of the most, a lot of people with autism seem to me like people who are just maybe a little bit quirky. And so do you, how does that work
yeah.
with your experience in life?
Yeah, so definitely I was always kind of the difficult person,
Mhm.
because if somebody asked me to do something, so if they say, "Oh, can you move those boxes over there?" I would say, "Oh, why am I doing that? What's the purpose?" I'm gonna do it. I'm not
Mhm.
arguing, but I need to know the reason, the purpose, because then it
Mhm.
makes more sense to me. I don't like doing things that don't make sense.
That are senseless.
Um,
Mhm.
and that's how it seems to my brain. But I saw a really good explanation on social media, and there's a lady, and she had an Arga cooker, and they have like loads and loads of knobs to adjust these fancy cookers. And she said autism, it's not, people think it's a spectrum, so it's here to here and then you're on the spectrum. No, that's not it. What they now know is it's like these cooker knobs. So you might have language turned up really high, rigidity turned down really low. You might have like sensory issues turned up high, and then you might have sort of language turned down low. So it depends, everybody's individual differences, um, they are really specialized to each person.
Mhm.
So I really struggle with um, bright lights, flashing lights, loud noises, high pitched noises, um, kind of sudden, like if a pan dropped on the floor, that would just completely throw me. And
Mhm.
for me, um, it's not that I'm gonna start screaming or run away. It's literally my whole nervous system is gonna jangle, and I will completely lose my thread of what I'm doing, what I was saying. Any whatever task I was in is just lost. My brain's kind of on
Mhm.
factory reset. It just stops. Um, and massive overthinker, huge overthinker. You know, when people, you're worried about something, and people go, "Oh, what's the worst that can happen?" I will tell you what is the worst that can happen, and I
Yep.
will tell you in like 6 scenarios because I'm prepared. And yeah, so people find that a bit. I also need like extreme clarity. So I need people to be super clear. If we arrange we're going to do, say we're going to meet on Friday, that's not good enough for me. I need to know what time are we meeting, where are we meeting, what are we doing when we get there, because I need clear. I can't
Mhm.
leave things open-ended, and that's kind of the main things I would say. Um, Plus, I have like funny things about textures, and there's certain foods that like I'm really texturally sensitive to.
Mhm.
And I guess, and this is the thing, before I knew I was autistic, I was just a difficult person. I was just difficult.
Uh-huh.
Now, like, hey, you're not difficult, you're actually autistic, so it's like a whole reframing that actually I'm not a bad or difficult person. I'm all right. I'm just different.
Right. How would you say that getting this diagnosis has impacted your writing or how you conduct your life?
Oh, do you know, it's made things so much easier. I had
Mhm.
no idea how much easier it's going to make things. And a really big thing for me is feeling like I'm not productive enough, because in theory this is my main job. I have no kids. I have a dog, but I have no kids. So I've got all
Mhm.
this time. Why am I not whooshing books out left, right, and center? Because I just don't have the energy for it. And I can only think about one thing at a time. So if I'm working on nonfiction, I just cannot be funny, and not not on paper at any rate. And and it's just made me realize that it's absolutely okay for me to take the time I need to take to rest, to balance, to just accept who I am, and that I'm the person that I'm doing the best I can. And some days that's not going to be great, and I'm going to spend the day in my greenhouse, or reading other people's books, which is kind of research. But yeah, I'm just going to kind of, it's not even a day by day thing. It's now like an hour by hour thing. That pressure that I put on myself, I just don't feel it anymore, which is amazing.
That's sounds like it's helped you a lot then.
Much.
I can kind of relate to a lot of this, some of it, like the constant pressure that I'm not doing enough. I call that the result of being raised by a military officer. It's never good enough. It's never fast enough. It's never enough. You can always do more. So I'd actually be interested in taking that test, finding out, what I score. Because a lot of what you say, I can really relate to.
Yeah.
I feel just the same.
Yeah, it's I'd say all of my friends now have taken the test. They're getting their families take the test. And I have one friend. So bear in mind that 55 is the cutoff for being neurotypical. I have one friend that she scored 22. And I was like, oh my goodness, you're so normal. And we were just laughing and laughing. She's like, I don't feel normal. I was like, yeah, but this is the proof. And we've just, we've had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I did years ago. I briefly saw a counselor because of some stuff going on with some people around me, and they were telling me, you're crazy and this and that, and you just can't understand reality, blah blah blah. I took the diagnostic test, and the counselor said, you're like the sanest person I've ever met. So it felt really good to get an official diagnosis. You are perfectly sane and rational.
Yes.
You're not the problem.
Yes.
So those tests can, I'm a little skeptical of some of them. I think some of them can pick up or diagnose or create, like, for instance, I knew in my kid's school, there was an autism specialist. And the speech therapist at that school once said to me, she's an autism specialist. She's looking for it. She will find it in any kid she talks to, because that's her job. And so she sees it everywhere. So, but obviously, this has been a very good thing for you.
Yeah.
So.
And it really does depend on people's agenda, doesn't it? And it's,
it does. Yeah.
I had one of the, so it's like a convoluted thing, but a friend of mine, her niece, took the test and scored really highly, but she had been, about a year ago, or whatever, she was really struggling just in life. She went to the doctors and she said, I think I might be autistic. And the doctor was like, no, you're making eye contact with me. You cannot be autistic. It's like, it's so much more than that. It's so much more. And you would kind of hope that a doctor would know, but they can't.
I have to admit, I sometimes feel a little bad for doctors, especially the generalists, because there's this massive wealth of information. They can't possibly be an expert on all the things they encounter every day. So, do you have a book that you're working on now?
So at the moment, I am just coming to the end. I'm finishing. I decided to rewrite one of my non-fictions, How to Write Without Block, and it just didn't have enough Eden in it. And I thought the first edition, I just thought it, it just didn't have any zhuzh. Do you know zhuzh? It just
Never
didn't
heard
have
the word.
any kind of. Oh, really? So it just means it just didn't have any sparkle. It could have been written by anybody. And I was just like, I'm reading this and I think this is boring. I'm going to rewrite this book. So I'm coming to the end of that rewrite. And then the next one after that will either be a humorous collection, which could be about work and workmates, which is an endless gold mine of activity, or it might be about like housemates and you know, and flat shares and things like that. So I haven't decided yet. I'm going to put a poll out to my very important reader gang and ask them, and then whatever they decide is what I will write.
That's what you'll write. That's great.
Yep.
Where can people find you online?
So edengruger.com. So that's EDENGRUGER.com.
Fantastic. Do you have social media, or are you on Facebook?
I have Facebook. I am on Facebook as Eden Gruger, the author. That's obviously my authoring thing. And if people want to speak to me or follow me for hints and tips about the mentoring side of it, I'm Write, Publish and Market with Eden Gruger, also on Facebook.
Fantastic. Listeners can find me at lauravosika.com. That is Laura, V as in Victor, OSIKA. I'm also at booksandbrews.net. And our sponsor is gabrielshornpress.com. So our newest book is, I have to get this background printed up as an actual sheet so people can see the books, Cooking with Rabbit. And that is a collection of rabbit recipes that I put together because we raise meat rabbits. They can also be pet rabbits, 4-H rabbits. One of my favorite books we've published is A Dream of Dragons by Lori Kehoe. And I think that's the most beautiful cover. And that is about a young woman who's found on the beach by a man, and she's having dreams of golden dragons. And gradually the dreams turn very dark. And so it's kind of a fantasy kind of. And then the same author who wrote that also collected her grandmother's poetry written in Hungarian and had them translated. So I think this is a fantastic book historically, and kind of the story of an immigrant coming here, a bit of American history and what that was for her. One of our books from a couple years ago, I think this is a great book because this is nonfiction, and it's the story of the author Ilona Myler, who was sort of tricked into running off to Spain with her boyfriend, who did not intend to be her boyfriend, but to sell her into service.
Wow.
And it's the story of how she finally got out of that when it seemed like a hopeless dead-end situation that she couldn't get out of, and she finally did. And she now travels around. She's from Germany, but she travels around, and I think sometimes in the United States, and talks to women and young women and tries to help them. And I shouldn't say try, because I believe she's been very successful. So I think that's a fantastic book that that book is needed today, unfortunately.
For sure.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep. So thank you for being on Books and Brews. Cheers.